When Fire Meets the Heart. Chapter 1. Shadows in the Light. Salem Village, March 1692. The church window let in a pale light that fell across the wooden pews. Mercy Parris sat like a statue beside her mother, her back straight, eyes lowered. She did not move, not even when the wind outside rattled the panes like a warning from God. Pastor Parris's voice echoed harshly between the walls, as if each word was meant to beat the smallest impurity from the air. The flesh is weak, but the spirit weaker still if it does not keep watch. A woman's body is Satan's finest instrument. Mercy knew exactly how to nod. When? How long? How deeply? She knew how to sit so no one would think she doubted, though doubt was precisely what had begun to bloom inside her. At first, the questions had come like drops of rain, sparse, almost invisible. But now, they were everywhere. In the things she dared not ask. In the strange hum she felt in her body when she glimpsed another girl's bare neck at the wash basin. In the dream where someone with gentle hands brushed her hair aside and whispered something she woke too soon to remember. God forbid. After the sermon came the quiet procession out through the church doors. Cloaks were drawn tightly over shoulders. Eyes stayed on the ground. Mercy walked beside her mother but let herself fall a step behind. She glanced about, pretending not to. Then she saw her. The woman stood near the graveyard fence, not far from the forest's edge. She wore no head covering. Her dark hair fell in a loose braid over one shoulder. She held a bundle of dried thyme in one hand and did not seem the least ashamed not to have attended the sermon. If anything, she looked as though it was they, the churchgoers, who were out of place. Mercy knew immediately who she was. Thomazine Cole, the so-called wise woman who lived with her aunt in the crooked little house near the swamp. A woman spoken of in hushed voices, said to know too much about herbs and too little about scripture. Thom met her gaze. And Mercy, the obedient, God-fearing daughter of the pastor, did not look away. In a moment too short to mean anything, yet too long to be an accident, their eyes held. Thom did not look angry, nor friendly. She looked curious, almost amused. Mercy had no time to understand what that meant before her mother tugged sharply at her sleeve. "Don't look at her," her mother hissed. "She does not know her place." But Mercy already knew her place. She knew it was behind her mother, beside her father, among hymns and sins. And yet there was another place growing in her thoughts now, where she stood alone in the woods, where the wind smelled of thyme, and where a woman with braided hair took her hand without asking. Chapter 2. The Herb Woman. The following morning arrived gray and wet, as if the sky itself had forgotten how to burn. Mercy sat at the kitchen table with her Bible open before her, pretending to read. The words blurred together, though she had read the same psalm 100 times before. Her mother moved quietly around the room, tending to bread dough, folding linens, speaking only when necessary. Her father had left at first light to attend a meeting in Salem town. "Deliver this to Sister Winslow," her mother said at last, placing a jar of thick salve into Mercy's hands. Her youngest took ill again. Mercy looked at the jar. It smelled of pine resin and vinegar, but also of something gentler, lavender perhaps, or balm. Her hands tightened around it. "She received it from the Cole woman," her mother added, her voice low, almost sour. "Not that we approve, but some in the village trust her potions." Mercy tried not to let her face betray anything. "Where shall I find her?" "She'll be at the well, more likely than not, or at her aunt's house. You know the path." Yes, she did. She had known it for years, though she had never taken it alone. She left the house with the jar wrapped carefully, in cloth, her cloak fastened tightly around her. The path to the Cole cottage wound along the edge of the woods, where shadows hung even at midday. Thin trees swayed in the wet breeze, their trunks dark with rain. Birds called, sharp and sudden, like warnings. Mercy's heart thudded too fast for a simple errand. She saw the house before she heard it. One crooked chimney, low roof, a line of drying herbs strung like prayer beads along the eaves. No one stood outside. For a moment she hesitated. She should have left the jar at the door. That would have been proper. But instead, she knocked. The door creaked open, and there she was. Thomazine stood in the shadow of the doorway, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, dark curls escaping her braid. Her hands were stained with crushed leaves. She didn't look surprised. "You're the pastor's girl," she said, not unkindly. Yes," Mercy said. "My mother asked me to bring this. For Sister Winslow. It's yours, I think." Thom took the jar without speaking. She held it up to the light, inspected it with an expert's eye. "She used too much vinegar," she said, sniffing. "It'll still work, but it'll sting." Mercy felt heat creep up her neck. I only brought it." Thom's mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "I know." She turned and gestured for Mercy to come inside. Mercy hesitated. She thought of her mother, of her father's sermons, of the things whispered about this house and the women who lived in it. But her feet moved before her will caught up. Inside, the room smelled of thyme, rosemary, rain-damp wool, and something Mercy couldn't name. It was warm. A small fire burned. In the hearth. Books lined the shelves. Strange ones, with worn leather covers and no crosses on the spine. Drying flowers hung from the rafters like an upside-down garden. Thom took a clean cloth and wiped her hands. "You've never been here." "Before." Mercy shook her head. "I wasn't allowed. And now? I wasn't told not to." That made Thom laugh, low and soft, like something lit from inside. "Careful, girl. That sounds like thinking for yourself." Mercy flushed deeper, but didn't look away. "Why do you help them, if they say such things about you?" Thom's eyes settled on her, steady and dark. "Because it matters more that I help than that they approve." Mercy stared at her, uncertain why those words struck her so sharply. Perhaps it was because no one had ever said such a thing aloud before. Perhaps it was because it was the first time she had met someone who seemed entirely unafraid. A silence grew between them, delicate, but not uncomfortable. And then Thom said, "You should see the spring violets. They're just beginning to open. Would you like to walk with me?" Mercy didn't know what she was supposed to say, but her body said yes, so she followed her out the door, down the narrow path, toward the edge of the forest, where something dangerous and beautiful waited to bloom. Chapter 3. Violets and Silence. The forest held its breath. Mercy stepped lightly between roots and stones, her skirts brushing against damp undergrowth. Beside her, Thom walked as if she belonged to the land, every movement sure, every step silent. Mercy stole glances when she could. Thom's sleeves were still rolled, her hands dirt-streaked and calloused. There was nothing soft about her, and yet something in her presence made the air feel gentler. "Do you come here often?" Mercy asked, just to break the silence. Thom turned slightly toward her. "I come where the plants tell me to. This patch of forest knows me." Mercy nodded as if she understood, though she didn't. But she wanted to. Soon, they came to a low clearing nestled between moss-covered stones and crooked birch trunks. Pale violet blossoms pushed up from the thawing earth, in delicate clusters, their petals trembling in the breeze. Thom crouched beside them. "They're early this year. They usually wait." Mercy knelt too, slower, careful not to soil her hem. She reached out and touched one of the flowers, brushing its petal with the tip of her finger. "They're beautiful." "They're bitter," Thom said, "but good for the blood." She paused. Most beautiful things are bitter somewhere. Mercy didn't know what to say. She let her hand rest just above the flower. Not touching it now, just close enough to feel the pulse of it. Or perhaps it was her own pulse she felt, pressing quietly into her fingertips. "You're not afraid to come here?" she asked after a while. Thom looked at her. "Are you?" Mercy hesitated. "Not of the woods. And of me?" That question lingered longer than it should have. Mercy met her eyes. "I don't know what I should be." A silence followed. Not cold or distant, but dense, like earth waiting to be turned. Thom did not smile. She only nodded, as if Mercy had said something truer than she realized. The wind shifted. A crow called in the distance. Mercy felt her own hands tremble and quickly tucked them beneath her cloak. The violet scent was faint but sweet. "My father says anything outside of scripture is a lie," Mercy said. "He says nature can be deceiving, that the devil wears beauty like a mask." Thom sat back on her heels. "He's not entirely wrong, but he forgets. Men wear masks too. And sometimes the truth has dirt under its nails and speaks with a woman's voice." Mercy looked up at her, startled. Thom held her gaze. Her expression was calm, unreadable, but behind her eyes was something like invitation. Not bold, not demanding. Just open. Mercy stood too quickly. "I should go. My mother will be wondering where you are," Thom finished softly. "Of course." They walked back in silence, though the space between them no longer felt empty. When they reached the edge of the woods, Thom paused. She picked one violet from the hem of the clearing and held it out. "For your pocket. Not for your mother." Mercy took it with unsteady fingers. "Thank you." Their hands touched, briefly, barely, but it was enough. Mercy walked home with the violet curled into her palm, its stem still damp from the morning earth. And that night, when she knelt at her bedside, to pray, her lips moved, but she said nothing at all. Chapter 4. The Sound of Splinters. The days that followed moved like molasses, slow, sweet, and hard to escape. Mercy kept to her duties. She sewed by the hearth, gathered eggs, tended the small garden outside their home. She read from the Bible at morning and knelt beside her father each night as he prayed aloud, his voice thick with righteousness. But something had shifted, and she felt it with every breath. She no longer belonged entirely in that house. Her body obeyed. Her hands stitched, her lips sang psalms, but her mind wandered. Back to the damp earth beneath the violets. Back to the scent of crushed herbs. Back to Thom's voice, low, steady, the way one speaks when they aren't asking permission. She had not gone back to the cottage. Not yet, but she found herself walking near the woods when errands allowed it. She looked for any trace that Thom had passed that way. A broken twig, a footprint, a curl of smoke between the trees. Once, she thought she heard humming in the distance, a melody that didn't belong to any church. She didn't tell anyone. Not even herself, not completely. One evening, as the sun bled red across the snow-mottled fields, Mercy sat with her needlework and pricked her finger. A bright bead of blood rose to the surface. She stared at it, transfixed. Such a small wound, but vivid. Honest. She wiped it on her apron, but the color lingered in her mind. Later, as her father led the family in reading from Revelation, she tried not to hear Thom's voice speaking over his. Sometimes the truth has dirt under its nails and speaks with a woman's voice. After supper, her mother sat darning socks, and her father dozed upright by the fire. Mercy rose quietly, said she needed air, and stepped out into the fading light. The cold bit at her cheeks. She walked slowly, unsure where her feet would take her, until she found herself near the edge of the woods again. She didn't expect to see her, and yet Thom was there, leaning against a bare tree, a small satchel slung over one shoulder. Her silhouette was sharp against the last rays of sun. She didn't seem surprised to see Mercy, as if she'd been waiting. "You walk like you're trying not to," Thom said. Mercy didn't answer at first. Her throat was dry. I shouldn't be here. I know. But I came. I know that too. They stood in stillness, the space between them taut as thread. Mercy looked at the ground, at the shape Thom's boots made in the soil. If anyone sees me, they won't. Thom's voice was quiet, not dismissive, but firm. And if they do, they'll see a girl near the woods. Nothing more. But I'm not just near the woods, Mercy whispered. I'm near you. Thom's gaze flickered, just once, a pause of breath, and then softened. Mercy stepped forward, just once, a single step. When I'm near you, it feels like something is breaking. Something inside me. Not breaking, Thom said. Splintering. Cracks let the light in. Mercy didn't know what to do with that. She didn't know how to stand, or where to look, or what to say. But Thom's presence was like gravity, not pulling exactly, but anchoring her to something real. A slow, delicate moment passed. Then Thom reached into her satchel and held something out. A dried sprig of rosemary, tied with thread, for courage, she said. Mercy took it, her fingers brushing Thom's. Again, that spark. Not hot, not shocking. Just real. Come tomorrow, Thom said. If you want, you don't have to knock. Mercy said nothing. She only nodded, the rosemary tight in her palm, her heart full of something wordless and wild. She returned home under cover of dusk. Her cheeks flushed from more than the cold. And that night, when her mother asked if she had prayed, Mercy lied, but with the gentlest, quietest voice. Chapter 5. The door. That stayed open, the morning air held the sharpness of thawing ice, a promise of warmth, but not yet a deliverance. Mercy left before the sun was fully risen. She told her mother she would gather eggs and look in on the Peterson boy's cough, but her hands trembled slightly as she tied her cloak. The dried rosemary Thom had given her was still tucked into her apron pocket. She'd slept with it under her pillow, though she didn't know why. The path to the Cole cottage was muddy from the snowmelt. Birds stirred in the trees. Somewhere behind her, Salem village woke to its usual rhythms. Smoke from chimneys, the low thud of axe against wood, dogs barking in the distance. But here in the woods, there was only breath and branches. When she reached the cottage, the door was already ajar, just as Thom had said. Mercy stood at the threshold for a moment. The silence inside was not empty. It was thick with scent and memory. Dried herbs hung like banners from the ceiling. A kettle hissed quietly over the hearth. She stepped inside. Thom was grinding something in a wooden mortar, her back turned. She didn't look up. I wondered if you would come, she said. Simply, I didn't knock. I said you didn't have to. Mercy took off her cloak and hung it carefully on a peg by the door. Her heart beat too fast, but her hands were steady. Thom looked over her shoulder. Hungry? Mercy blinked, startled by the ordinary question. A little. Good. I made tea. The kind the pastor would call sinful. She grinned, and it was the first time Mercy had seen her smile without restraint. They sat by the fire on 2 low stools. The tea was sharp and herbal, unfamiliar but soothing. Thom handed her a piece of honey bread without ceremony. You're not what I expected, she said after a moment. Mercy looked at her. What did you expect? A girl who'd come once and never again. One who'd be too afraid of what her father might say. Or what she might feel. Mercy flushed, but she didn't look away. I am afraid. But you came anyway. There was a long pause. The kind that made space rather than tension. Mercy reached out and touched a hanging bundle of sage. Does it really heal? It helps, Thom said. Healing is never just one thing. Not a plant, not a prayer. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's telling the truth. Mercy looked at her over the rim of her cup. And what is the truth? Thom held her gaze. That I'm glad you're here. That when you walked into that churchyard, something in me said there. And I don't know what that means yet. But it wasn't nothing. Mercy's chest ached, but not in the way it used to when her father preached of hell. It was a yearning ache, the kind that made her want to step closer instead of run. She set her teacup down, slowly, deliberately. Her fingers brushed Thom's when she passed it back. This time, neither of them pulled away. There was nothing grand about what happened next. No thunder, no declarations, only closeness. Thom leaned in, just slightly. Her voice dropped. "May I?" Mercy answered with a breath. Thom's hand cupped her jaw, warm and sure. The kiss was feather-light, a whisper against Mercy's lips, not asking for more, just offering. Mercy closed her eyes. The world stilled. She had been kissed before, once by the blacksmith's son behind the mill. But this was nothing like that. There was no urgency, no need to prove. Just presence. When they parted, Thom didn't move away. Her forehead rested lightly against Mercy's. "You can go," she said. "Any time. I'll not ask for more than you can give." But Mercy didn't move. Not yet. Not for a long time. Outside, the wind rustled the eaves and the trees beyond. But inside, everything was quiet. Not the quiet of fear, the quiet of beginning. Chapter 6. Whispers. Beneath the floorboards, the snow had melted in earnest now, and mud clung to every hemline. Spring was trying its best to arrive, but the wind still carried the bite of winter. And something else. Something Mercy could not name. She felt it in the way eyes lingered longer at the well, in how Sister Goodwin paused before answering her greeting, in the way her father muttered prayers under his breath, even when no one was listening. Something was shifting in the village, and it was not just the weather. At supper one evening, Mercy sat silently as her father spoke in tones tighter than usual. "There are disturbances," he said, cutting his meat with sharp, deliberate strokes. "Odd behaviors, strange fits. Some say the devil is among us again. That witch's walk, unrepentant." Mercy's hand froze halfway to her mouth. Her mother crossed herself. "I warned the elders. Leniency breeds corruption. Those who turn away from the Lord open the door to worse things." "Do they know who?" her mother asked, voice low. "Not yet," he said. "But the girls are naming names?" Mercy swallowed hard. Her tongue felt dry. She kept her face still, neutral, but her mind was already racing. The girls, she had seen them, Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam, others, gathered behind the meeting house, whispering feverishly, their eyes too wide, their laughter edged with cruelty. Mercy had always thought them silly, shallow. But now they were dangerous, and they were watching. After supper, she escaped to the yard, claiming she needed air. Her thoughts spun, like loose wool. She didn't yet know if the girls had spoken Thom's name, or hers, but she could feel the noose tightening around something sacred, and she had to warn her. That night, Mercy crept from the house under cover of clouds, her cloak barely enough to hold back the wind. The woods felt different now, not unwelcoming but tense, as if they too knew what was coming. The cottage glowed faintly ahead. She knocked this time, hurried, not coy. Thom opened the door and read her face instantly. "What is it?" "They're stirring," Mercy whispered, "saying witches walk among us. My father, he said the girls have begun to name names." Thom's jaw tightened, but she stepped aside. Let Mercy in. Inside, the room was warm and shadowed, the fire low but steady. The air smelled of chamomile and ash. Mercy clutched her hands together. "Have they named you?" Thom asked. "I don't know. but they're hungry for someone to burn. Thom moved to the hearth and stirred the coals with a slow, careful hand. They always are. You have to be careful. Thom looked at her. I am always careful. No, Mercy said. Not just careful, invisible, hidden, She paused, breath catching. I don't know what I would do if they came for you. There. It was out. Not just concern. Not just fear. Love. It pulsed in the space between them. Thom crossed the room slowly. She took Mercy's hands, gently pried them open. Her thumbs traced the raw creases in Mercy's palms. You're shaking, she said. I'm not afraid for me. I am, Thom said softly, because you came anyway. Mercy blinked back tears. She hated them. Tears meant weakness. And weakness was dangerous now. Stay here, Thom said. Tonight, just tonight, you'll be safe, and it will give your hands time to stop shaking. Mercy hesitated. Not because she didn't want to, but because staying would mean something. I don't want to go back, she whispered. Not ever. Thom brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Then don't, Mercy. Not yet. She nodded. Just once. Later, as she lay beneath Thom's patchwork quilt, listening to the wind outside and the soft rhythm of breath beside her, Mercy felt something she hadn't in weeks. Not peace, not safety, but truth. And that, she realized, was more dangerous than anything. Chapter 7. Shadows of Accusation. The village of Salem was no longer a place of simple routines and familiar faces. Whispers turned into accusations, and fear seeped into every corner. The once quiet streets were now filled with murmurs of witchcraft and the devil's work. Mercy sat by the window, her hands trembling as she clutched a letter from Thomazine. The words were hurried, the ink smudged in places. They are coming for me. The whispers have grown louder, and I fear I am next. Be cautious, my love. Her heart pounded as she read the words over and over. The thought of Thomazine being taken, tried, or worse, was unbearable. That evening, Mercy's father returned home with a grim expression. Another has been accused, he announced. Thomazine Cole. Mercy's blood ran cold. She forced herself to appear surprised, to feign ignorance. Thomazine? But she's just a healer, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father shook his head. Healers, midwives, women. Who live alone, they are all suspect now. The devil hides in plain sight. Mercy excused herself and retreated to her room, where she allowed herself to weep silently. She knew she had to act, but any move could endanger them both. The next day, she ventured into the woods, hoping to find Thomazine. The cottage was empty, the door ajar. Inside, herbs hung from the ceiling, and a fire smoldered in the hearth. On the table lay another note. I have gone into hiding. Trust no one. I will send word when it is safe. Mercy clutched the note to her chest, vowing to protect Thomazine at all costs. Chapter 8. The questioning. The church smelled of dust and old smoke. Mercy sat on the front pew, her hands folded, her mouth dry. The wooden floor creaked with every shift of a body. Her father stood near the pulpit, speaking with Elder Hawthorne. In hushed tones, she hadn't been summoned. Not formally, but her presence had been requested. That was the word they used now, requested. It meant watched. It meant suspected. She could feel their eyes on her. The women. The girls. Even the children. Abigail Williams sat 2 pews behind her, whispering into the ear of Ruth Putnam. Their giggles were sharp, cruel. Mercy kept her gaze fixed on the altar. Mercy Parris, came her father's voice at last, loud and slow. Step forward. She rose. Her legs did not shake. She had practiced this. On the walk here, in the mirror of the wash basin. She had told herself again and again, "You are the daughter of a pastor. You are nothing to suspect," and yet, the moment she turned to face the room, a hush fell over it. Heavy. Hungry. "Do you know the woman called Thomazine Cole?" Elder Hawthorne asked. Mercy nodded slowly. "I've spoken with her." The elder narrowed his eyes. "You've visited her? She offered me herbs once for a fever. She lives near the edge of the forest. Many do." Abigail stood abruptly. "She taught Mercy to speak in strange tongues," she said, loud and clear. "I saw them once, whispering with heads bowed, like a prayer, but not to God." Murmurs rose. Mercy turned toward her father, but he said nothing. "I've never spoken anything but English and scripture," Mercy said firmly, "and I have never seen Miss Cole do anything unholy." "Have you been alone with her?" Hawthorne asked. Mercy's heart kicked in her chest. "She is a woman," she said. "I did not know I needed a chaperone to accept a tea leaf." There were a few uneasy chuckles, but they quickly died. The elder stepped forward, voice low. "Do you deny any unnatural closeness between you and the accused?" Mercy felt something rise in her throat. She swallowed it down. "I deny anything the devil would delight in." It was an answer designed to be just vague enough, carefully balanced. It could mean yes. It could mean no. It could mean nothing at all. But it was not a lie. The questioning ended without formal charge. For now. But the eyes followed her out of the church like cold fingers. That night, back home, Mercy sat awake long after the candles had burned down. She opened the loose floorboard beneath her cot and pulled out Thomazine's last letter. Read it in the dark. Trust no one. They would come for her again, sooner or later, and when they did, she would have to choose. Speak the truth and burn, or lie and lose her, and she wasn't sure which would hurt more. Chapter 9. The Fire Beneath. The wind howled through the eaves of the Parris house, carrying with it the scent of rain and something older. Ash, maybe. Or memory. Mercy could not sleep. Every creak in the floorboards made her flinch. Every distant dog bark could be a summons. She lay still beneath her quilt, eyes wide open, until the moon passed behind clouds and all was dark. Then she rose, not out of restlessness, out of decision. She dressed quickly and quietly, her cloak tight around her, and slipped out the back door. Her footsteps were light but determined. The night was thick with damp fog, muffling the world. The village slept, or pretended to. She didn't take the path to the woods. Instead, she went to the well behind the meeting house, where a scrap of cloth was tied beneath the lip of the stones, the signal Thom had shown her weeks ago. It fluttered now like a breath. Still there. So Thom was alive. Mercy pulled a folded note from beneath the stone ledge, almost invisible in the dark. She opened it with shaking fingers. "Meet me. Second hollow past the north tree line. Moonrise. Alone." She memorized the words and burned the note in the well's torchlight. The flame devoured it in seconds, and then she was gone. She moved through the woods like someone born to it. Her feet knew the roots, the stones, the wet moss. The trees whispered nothing, a good sign. She reached the hollow just before the moon crested the hills. And there Thom stood, leaning against the trunk of an old birch. Her hair was tucked beneath a hood, but her eyes, when she looked up, were unmistakable, steady, unreadable, and warm. "You came?" Thom said. Mercy nodded, breathless. "I had to." Thom reached for her hand. "I've been watching from afar. The trials are escalating. They've arrested 3 more. "I know. They'll come for you too if they think you're protecting me." "I don't care," Thom frowned. "You should. That's what they want, for you to make a mistake, to give them cause. Mercy stepped closer. I already did. I loved you. Silence. Then Thom exhaled, a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. She pulled Mercy into her arms. The kiss that followed was not sweet. It was desperate, wet with the taste of rain, salt, fear. Their mouths met like a clash and then softened, breath mingling. Mercy felt herself dissolve into it. She had never kissed like this, with the full knowledge that it could be the last time, that it might cost them everything. But still, she did not pull away. I have to leave Salem, Thom whispered. If I stay, they'll hang me, and they might hang you. Mercy didn't answer right away. She pressed her forehead to Thom's. Then I'll leave too. Thom's arms tensed around her. You'd do that? Leave your family? Mercy didn't hesitate. I already left them the moment I chose not to betray you. They stood there, entwined, as the moon climbed higher and the world held its breath. Tomorrow they would plan. Tomorrow they would run. But for now, for this moment, they just held on, because the fire beneath Salem was spreading, and love, in this place, in this time, was the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 10. The Map They Drew in Ashes. By morning, Salem had changed again. 3 women stood shackled in the village square. One of them, old Goody Watkins, had once nursed Mercy's sister through a fever. Now she was accused of consorting with spirits because a cow gave birth to a stillborn calf. The girls screamed and fell into fits, wailing about phantoms and dreams, and the townspeople, once decent neighbors, nodded grimly, eager for someone to blame. Mercy stood in the crowd with her mother. Her heart pounded, but her face was still. She watched her father confer with Elder Hawthorne, their brows furrowed in holy concern. Her mother muttered prayers. Mercy just watched the accused, their silence, their shame, and held her own silence like a blade. That night, she slipped away again. Thom was waiting in the hollow. The moonlight cut sharp edges into her face. It's worse now, she said. Isn't it? Yes, Mercy whispered. They've arrested a child, 9 years old. They say she knew the devil's names. Thom clenched her jaw. Then it's no longer about proof. It's about fear. They sat on the cold earth together, shoulder to shoulder, not speaking. For a while. Then Thom drew a piece of cloth from her satchel and spread it between them. A crude map, made with charcoal and pressed wildflower ink. I've marked the old deer path through the backwoods. It crosses into Ipswich without passing a single home. From there, we can take a trader's wagon along the coast. To where? Rhode Island. Or even New Amsterdam, places where the Puritans have no say. Mercy traced the lines with one finger. Her hand trembled slightly. If we go, she said slowly, there's no return. Thom looked at her. That's the point. A rustle in the trees made them both freeze. Thom's hand found Mercy's instinctively. A moment passed, just wind. Still, they didn't let go. We go tomorrow night, Thom said. The moon will be full. We'll need the light. Mercy nodded, but her voice was quiet. I need to do one thing first. What? See my sister. Thom's brow furrowed. Why? Because she deserves to know I didn't just vanish. That I left because I chose something. Someone. Because love isn't a sin, even if they say it is. Thom didn't argue. She just touched Mercy's face, her thumb brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. I'll wait here, she said, until the moon rises. If you're not back, I'll go, Mercy. I won't wait long. You won't need to, Mercy said, and she meant it. The plan was set, the path chosen. But even as they kissed again, softly this time with trembling resolve, Mercy knew that anything could still go wrong, because in Salem, even hope could be a gallows rope. Chapter 11. A Candle. Left burning. The Parris house was quiet when Mercy slipped through the door just before dawn. A low fire smoldered in the hearth, casting the room in amber and shadow. She paused in the entryway, listening. Only silence. Moved with careful steps toward her sister's room. Grace lay asleep on her side, her small hand curled beneath her cheek, the blanket rising and falling with each soft breath. Mercy stood in the doorway, her throat tightening. She remembered brushing Grace's hair in the mornings before school, remembered holding her when she had nightmares of devils and fire. Grace was innocent. She did not understand the wickedness of the world, or how often wickedness wore the face of righteousness. Mercy sat beside her quietly and laid a folded scrap of parchment on the bedside table. She'd written it hours before, under a tree, her tears blotting the ink. Grace, I love you. I am not lost, and I have not been bewitched. I have chosen a life where my soul is not weighed in silence. Tell them I went with God in my heart, even if they say otherwise. Mercy. She didn't wake Grace. It would have been too hard. Instead, she pressed her lips gently to her sister's brow and slipped back into the dark, heart pounding. She made it halfway to the door before she heard it. Mercy? Her. Mother stood in the hallway. Her nightgown was wrinkled, her hair loose. Her eyes glittered in the dim light, not with anger, but with something worse. Recognition. You're leaving, she said quietly. Mercy froze. Her mother stepped closer. You think I didn't know? Mercy turned slowly. Then why say nothing? I prayed. I hoped it was only confusion or youth. But I saw you, Mercy. You look at her the way I once looked at your father. There was no accusation in her voice, only sorrow. You must tell no one, Mercy said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, Mama. Her mother looked away. The town is looking for devils in every shadow. But love doesn't hide in shadows, child. I'll be safe, Mercy said. If I go tonight, I can make it to Ipswich before dawn. Her mother reached forward and tucked a loose curl behind Mercy's ear. Her fingers were cool, trembling slightly. You always were the brave one, she said. Braver than I ever was. Then she stepped back. Go. Now. And don't stop. Mercy hesitated only once, then kissed her mother's hand and turned. Away. The wind outside had quieted, and the village was still asleep. But somewhere, a candle had been lit. A window glowing gold. Someone was awake and watching. She pulled her cloak tighter and ran, toward Thom, toward the trees, toward freedom. Chapter 12. The edge of the world. The moon was a silver blade in the sky as Mercy reached the hollow. Thom was already there, pacing near the tree line, her breath rising in clouds. She turned the moment she saw Mercy, relief breaking across. Her face like sunlight through cloud. I thought something had happened, she said. It almost did, Mercy replied, catching her breath. My mother saw me. And? She let me go. Thom paused, then nodded. Then we run. They didn't speak again for some time. The forest swallowed their footsteps. The deer path wound east and south, narrow and damp from last week's. Rain, but passable. Thom knew the turns by memory, and Mercy followed without question. Hours passed. Once, a distant howl rose in the dark. A wolf, or perhaps just wind curling through broken branches. Thom didn't flinch. Mercy squeezed her hand tighter. We're close, Thom whispered as they reached the creek that marked the boundary between Salem's edge and the no-man's land of Ipswich. But just as they stepped into the water to cross, a voice rang out behind them. Stop! They turned. 3 figures stood on the bank, lanterns raised, cloaks heavy with frost. One held a musket, Another held a cross. The third was Elder Hawthorne, his face twisted in something between fury and triumph. I knew it. The witch and her disciple. Mercy stepped in front of Thom without hesitation. She is no witch. You would say that, Hawthorne hissed. You're bewitched yourself. You abandoned your home, lied to your family, consorted in secret. I chose her, Mercy said, her voice sharp as flint. And I would again. Thom touched her arm, stepping forward. Let her go. I'm the one you want. You're both guilty, Hawthorne said, but only one must hang to satisfy the town's thirst. The man with the gun stepped forward. Thom met his gaze calmly. If I come willingly, she walks free? Hawthorne hesitated. If you confess. No, Mercy gasped. Thom. But Thom had already pulled free. She stepped out of the water, bare feet meeting frost, and faced the men. I confess to loving her, she said. And if that's the devil's work, then let him take me. There was a stunned silence. Then the gun lowered, slowly. The man holding it stared at her like he'd never seen a woman before. One who didn't beg. Enough, Thom said. Let her go. But Mercy moved before anyone could stop her. No, she said, voice breaking. You don't get to sacrifice yourself. Not for me. She stepped beside Thom and took her hand, right there in the lantern light. You want a confession? Here's mine. I love her. I love her like light loves the morning. I won't repent it. Hawthorne took a step back as if struck. The third man, the one with the cross, looked between them and then lowered his eyes. This is not our place, he muttered. Not anymore. He turned and walked away. The other man followed. Hawthorne remained. Then, with a sneer, he dropped the lantern into the water and disappeared into the trees. The path was clear. Thom stood in stunned silence for a heartbeat, then laughed, low, sharp, almost disbelieving. You're insane, she whispered. So are you, Mercy replied, grinning through tears. And then they ran, through the creek, through the woods, into the dark that was no longer terrifying. Because it meant freedom, because they had survived. Together. Chapter 13. Beyond the Smoke. The sun rose slowly over the coastal road to Ipswich, spilling pale gold across the dewy fields. The sky, wide and clear, stretched like promise itself. It was the first sunrise Mercy had seen outside the Waite of Salem. For the first time in her memory, she did not greet the day with a prayer for survival, but with a breath. They walked for hours that morning, their hands brushing now and then, but not always touching. Not out of fear, that was behind them now, but because each of them needed space to think, to feel the weight of freedom settle on their shoulders. I keep thinking someone will come after us, Thom finally said, her voice low. They won't, Mercy replied, though part of her still glanced over her shoulder with every mile. They didn't need to spare us, Thom said. They could have taken us back. Mercy looked up at her. They saw it, the truth, that we weren't witches, just women who refused to lie. Thom let out a breath. That's always been enough for them to burn us. They fell quiet again until the rooftops of Ipswich came into view between the trees, squat timber houses, thatched smoke, and the shimmer of the sea just beyond. They didn't enter as fugitives. They looked like any two travelers. Cloaks, dusty, boots worn, expressions unreadable. They found a woman near the harbor who rented out a loft space to passing sailors and widows. She looked at the girls, at Mercy's dirt-smudged hem and Thom's torn satchel, and simply said, "Week's coin up front." They paid with what little Thom had traded for herbs in the last village. The room was small, a sloped roof, one window, one bed. Thom dropped her satchel and turned slowly, as if uncertain what to do next. Mercy crossed the floor and touched her hand. "We're safe now," she whispered. "I know," Thom said, but her voice trembled and her fingers tightened around Mercy's. That night, the sea breeze blew soft through the open window, bringing with it the scent of salt and something tender, like lavender crushed in memory. The small loft room was quiet, lit only by the orange hush of the hearth's last embers and the silver wash of moonlight across the wall. Mercy lay beside Thom in the narrow bed, her fingers gently brushing the other girl's wrist. A silent, language they had grown fluent in, touch without words, breath without explanation. "You still smell like pine smoke," Thom whispered against Mercy's collarbone, her voice husky from exhaustion and something deeper. Longing held too long. "Beneath the surface. Better than brimstone," Mercy teased softly, her lips grazing Thom's temple. Thom laughed, the sound low and warm. "You laugh, but I remember the first time I saw you. You looked like a vision, like a hymn I'd forgotten the words to." Mercy's heart fluttered. "And I thought you were dangerous, untamed. You looked at me like you already knew all the secrets I'd never dared speak aloud." Thom's hand slipped to Mercy's waist, fingertips light at first. A tentative question. Mercy's breath caught. This time she didn't retreat. She leaned forward and kissed Thom slowly, deeply, the kind of kiss that unfolded like silk, like petals warmed in sunlight. Their mouths moved with a hunger that was not new, only finally unleashed. Months of longing pressed between them now gave way, inch by inch. Thom's hands slid over Mercy's hips, up her back, pulling her closer. There was reverence in every movement, as if touching something sacred. But there was no fear now. Only the certainty of being wanted, completely, without shame. Mercy sighed into the kiss, her body arching toward Thom's as if drawn by something. Ancient and true. Their limbs tangled, their breath mingling. Skin met skin in slow discovery, soft shifts of fabric slipping away. The room grew warmer despite the night's chill. Every inch of contact was a confession, fingers mapping the curve of a shoulder, the hollow of a back, the tender skin just beneath the ribs. They moved as if they had all the time in the world, as if the dawn could wait until they were finished remembering what it meant to be alive. And in that room, tucked above the sleeping harbor, love did not ask permission. It bloomed. When they finally stilled, curled into each other beneath the thin quilt, Mercy felt a strange quiet settle inside her. Not absence, but peace. She pressed a kiss to the curve of Thom's shoulder. This is the truest thing I've ever known." Thom's fingers laced with hers. "Then let's build a life out of it." Outside, the sea whispered its secrets to the shore. And in that tiny loft room, two women, once nearly broken by fire, held each other in the gentle ruins of night, whole at last. By dawn, they lay tangled together, the sea outside whispering gently through the shutters. They had escaped Salem, but they had not escaped everything. The world would still press its weight upon them. But for now, they had space. To breathe, to heal, to love. And that was more than enough.